From ancient rituals and parties to modern day fireworks and get-togethers. Let's talk about the New Year celebrations from across the world and time and how you can use them in your creative endeavors. This episode will hopefully help you better understand how New Year has been celebrated from times immemorial and how we got to the customs we enjoy today. Now, if you are also a game master, I am sure you already reached or will reach that point when your homebrewed world crosses into a new year. What kind of celebrations do the people in your world have? What do they symbolize? Leave a comment down below if you wanna swap ideas. Now, I am sure you can easily take some inspiration from the real world, and that's where I come in, so stick around and enjoy. Hello everyone, Funky Monkey here, and for those who celebrated the New Year, welcome to 2023. Those who are yet to celebrate it, hope you will have a good time and may the New Year be better for all of us. I hope that you enjoyed your winter celebrations and got some rest. For me personally, the holiday was a little too short and I could have used at least, I don't know, an extra month or so of R&R, but alas. Here we are, so we might as well make the best of it. If you are wondering if it isn't a little too late to talk about the new year, well, no, not really. As you might imagine, people from all over the world celebrate the new year at different times. But before we jump in our story and tell you all about New Year, let us talk about the miniature. With a new year, of course, come new ambitions, and I wanted, as my first miniature, to go with something big. So I chose to go with Borborygmos from WizKids Magic the Gathering miniature series. As you might imagine, I won't be able to finish painting the miniature in one go, so by the end of this video I'll reach the midpoint and show you the second part of the painting next time. So if you want to see the final result, make sure you don't miss my next video. By the way, Borborygmos is the rumbling noise that your tummy makes when there's gas moving in there. Especially with the kind of food some of us eat over the winter celebrations, I am sure you are all familiar with that sound that announces an impending catastrophe. Anyway, let me tell you what my plans for this miniature are. This time around I will pause the video for a bit because I want to make sure I have enough time to talk about what I'm trying to do. My plan is quite simple, try something new. I remember watching Sam Lent's video about skin tones and I want to try out his method. Of course, I don't come anywhere near what Sam did, but it's my first step I'm taking in learning how to better play around with skin tones and practice my wet blending. As per usual, I went with a black base coat, but the matte black from Ammo Mig didn't have the opacity I was going for, so I had to turn to something else. I decided to experiment with an acrylic paint that I bought by mistake actually, Deco from Pebeo. I don't think it was meant for minis, but hey, it worked much better than I expected. Then I went in with zenithal priming, simulating midday sun, using matte white from Pebeo. In his video, Sam uses barbarian flesh as a base for the exposed skin, and so will I, and he also adds olive green to the skin. I didn't have olive green, so I went with Elysian green, and he uses blue to add shades to the darker areas of the skin. I went with McCreek blue. On the one hand, I want to go for the same jungle environment he did in his video, while on the other hand, I want to go with the old tried and true method, monkey see, monkey do, with me being the monkey as my name implies, and try and learn by copying his method. I will also divide the miniature into segments, treating each segment separately. Each limb will be a segment, the face will be a separate segment, and the torso will be divided in two. I will also link his video in the description below if you want to check it out for yourself, try his method, or if you want to simply see a master at work. With that said and done, let us go through the first checklist of the year. I have some coffee in my mug, I have some delicious tea in my mousse cup, I have something for the soul and to start the year right, and one of my lovely assistants, Potato, is actually up there sleeping. How about you? Are you comfy? Awesome. Well, I guess then it's time for a story. We, as a species, enjoy celebrations, enjoy coming together as a community. As such, from the infancy of our species, we have sought out new reasons to party. The crossing into a new year is indeed a big thing, for all of us. It is a time of renewed hope, a time of renewed ambitions, of trying to better ourselves, a time of cleansing and a time when we promise to exercise more. It is also a time when we perform rituals that we either don't notice, enjoy performing, or we've turned what used to be rituals into shows. With that said, When it comes to celebrations, the closer we get to our modern times, the more sources and documentations we have, as you might imagine. The oldest mention of a New Year celebration known to us comes from ancient Mesopotamia, from around 2000 BCE, so over 4000 years ago. Let's start by talking about ancient Babylon. The Babylonian New Year was celebrated during the spring equinox. Actually, the first new moon after the spring equinox, the equivalent of late March or early April. The festivity was called Akitu and was the celebration of the victory of the sky god Marduk over the evil sea goddess Tiamat. It was also the moment when a new ruler was crowned or when the rulership of the existing king or ruler was renewed. It is also the moment when barley was harvested. Actually, this is where the name of the celebration actually comes from. Akitu means barley in Sumerian. The Assyrians, their neighbors, celebrated the new year with the new moon of the autumn equinox. As you can see, even people that were pretty closely related and neighbors celebrated at different moments in time. As we move closer to our times, we get to see other major civilizations celebrate their new year. In case you didn't know, before we move on, equinox is the day when the length of the day is equal to that of the night. This happens twice per year, once in March, on the 1st of March, and the other on the 21st of September. It comes from equi and nox, equal and night. Moving on, let us talk about the Egyptians. These ancient people celebrated the new year with the autumn equinox, around September 21st. For the Egyptians, this was a very special moment because it corresponded with the beginning of the flood season in the kingdom, the moment when the Nile would flood the Nile Delta. The celebration was called Wepet Renpet. I am sure I'm mispronouncing it, but I don't really know ancient Egyptian pronunciations, but it roughly translates to the opening of the year. Being the beginning of the agricultural season, of course, this celebration was very important. It represented birth and rejuvenation, revitalization of the land and of life. Recent discoveries indicate that it was also linked to the goddess Sekhmet. The temple of Mut housed a great feast and celebration during the first month of the year, celebrating the goddess being deceived and stopped from enacting vengeance on the people of Egypt by her father, the god Ra. If you want to know more about Sekhmet, the legendary first vampire in human legends, make sure you check out my video on vampires. Anyway, the celebration involved music, food, and, of course, general merriment. Now, let's move on closer to our time and back to Europe. The Romans. They celebrated the New Year on the 1st of March with the spring equinox. Because the Roman calendar had only 304 days, it fell out of sync with the actual season. So, their second king, yes, Rome had 7 kings before it became a republic, before it was an empire. Anyway, Numa Pompilius, their second king, introduced 2 new months to compensate, January and February. But this wasn't enough. The calendar still went out of sync, so in 153 BCE they changed New Year to 1st of January. By the way, I will have to talk about the names of the months in different cultures, but that's another story for another time. Later, in 46 BCE, Caesar decided to reform the calendar once more and try to sync it even better with the seasons. So, with the help of astronomers and mathematicians, he reformed the calendar, introducing the Julian calendar and created a new month, July. The shift to January also had a deeper meaning. January is named after the Roman god Janus, the god of beginnings, of crossroads, of thresholds, and of time. The god is represented as having 2 faces. The 1st of January was all the more fitting, with one face looking back upon the year that had just passed, and the other one looking forward to the new year, to renewal. The celebration was called Calende Januarii, as the Romans called the first day of the month of each month Calende. The Romans greeted one another with the phrase Leta Dies, meaning cheerful or merry day, and believed that if they spent the whole day of the new year happy, they would be happy for the rest of the year. They ate sweets, believing, or I think more likely hoping, that by doing so they will ensure that the new year would be a sweeter one. They also gifted money, usually a bronze as coin, the lowest denomination. They did this for two reasons. One, the ass at one point had the effigy of Janus on one of the faces of the coin, and it was fitting. And they also believed that by gifting and receiving money, they would ensure a more prosperous year. During the new year, the thresholds of homes were decorated with green branches and lamps, and these lamps would be lit at night to shed light on the thresholds, inviting the new year in. They also celebrated with feasts, playing dice, street performances, music and dances. It was kind of a debauchery. They also had a New Year goddess. This I didn't know before I researched for this episode. Anna Perenna. Name derived from Annus, meaning year, and perennis, meaning eternal, as the ancient author Ovid mentions. Just get your mind out of the gutter? Thank you. Of course, there were other superstitions as well. Gossip, quarrels, and anger were to be avoided. The workload had to be very light so that the new year wouldn't be a burden. If the day fell on a nundine or market day, the year would be a sorrowful one. If it fell on the last day of the week, the year would be filled with war or an official would die. If it was on a Monday, it would foretell the death of children, high prices, and many other superstitions. People would also try and divine the future by opening and reading the first poem their eyes fell upon from the books of Homer and Virgil. As you can see, they had a lot of very interesting superstitions and ideas, and I think that most of them, or some of them at least, actually survived to this day. I have to be honest, even I still believe that the way the new year finds me is very important. I try to have some money in my wallet, some dice in my pocket, music playing around me, a book at hand, and those I love around me. There were moments when the new year found me traveling or found me alone, moments it found me upset, and I always try to avoid that. Also, it's strange, I'm not a very superstitious person, but this is one of the very few superstitions I have. Someone told me at one point that I have to have some pure iron or wrought iron in the house at midnight, but I found a better solution. I started playing the songs of my favorite heavy metal bands throughout the New Year night. It checks two of the points at the same time, music and metal. Now, I have a question. Do you have any of these strange superstitions regarding New Year? I'm very curious. If you feel like sharing, do leave a comment down below. Anyway, let us move on. In medieval times, Christians celebrated New Year on the 25th of March with the Annunciation. For those who do not know what this is, it is the Christian belief that this is the day when Archangel Gabriel announced the Virgin Mary that she will be impregnated by the power of the Holy Spirit and that her son will be called Jesus and all of that. At the same time, the Christians were celebrating on the 25th of March. The Anglo-Saxon world kept celebrating on the 25th of December. There were some back and forths with the dates for a while, with the celebration being moved back to January 1st and then back to March 25th. This happened until 1582, when the Gregorian calendar was adopted by the Catholic Church. They set the new year on January 1st once more, and slowly but surely all European states fell in line. I will give you some examples of the bigger ones for context. Scotland accepted and moved the new year on January 1st in 1660, Germany and Denmark in the 1700s, England in 1752, and Russia in 1918. As you can see, the Russians accepted January 1st pretty recent actually. Now, before we continue, let us take a few moments and talk about the miniature. Oh, before you go, make sure you hit that like button if you found any value in this video thus far, and make sure you check out TW Creative - Cats if you want to see more of Mango and Potato's adventures. Now, let's go to the miniature. Right now I am using a mix of barbarian flesh and Ushapti bone, and I am highlighting the leg and the hand that I have already painted. It is a little more difficult than it might sound to think of how the light would catch rippling muscle, at least for me. I am trying to first highlight the areas facing upwards and then accentuate smaller and smaller areas such as the toes, the kneecap, the knuckles, and the bulging veins on the arm. The moment I start a new area, I go in with a thin coat of pure barbarian flesh so I can wet blend the other colors in properly, otherwise it would only be painting and not wet blending. Welcome back. Let us continue our discussion around New Year celebrations. And let us continue by talking about the Jewish people. The Hebrew celebrate New Year during the Rosh Hashanah, during the month of Tishri. I apologize if I'm butchering these names. This month usually falls between September and October when referenced to the Gregorian calendar. Rosh Hashanah is a 2-day celebration that falls on the 25th and 27th of October, or between the 25th and the 27th. The name of the celebration itself translates to the head of the year. During this period, people throw pieces of bread in a river or a spring or another moving body of water to symbolize casting off the sins of the past year. And being a time of renewal, people also take this opportunity to reflect on their shortfalls during the past year and think about how they could improve over the course of the next one. During these 2 days of celebration, some Jewish communities do not work at all, spending times with their families. Others don't use any kind of electronics, while others spend time in prayer in the synagogues. The mornings of both days are marked with the call of a horn called shofar horn, a ram's horn. This is a call to repentance. And of course, because this is still a celebration, who would celebrate without eating any sweets? The usual sweets? Apples dipped in honey so that the new year is sweet, round loaves of bread dipped in honey, pomegranate seeds, and heads of rams or fish, a symbol for the head of the year. But the Rosh Hashanah marks the beginning of the High Holy Days, or the 10 days of penitence that end with the Yom Kippur, the most sacred Jewish holiday. Let us stick to the Middle East and continue by talking about Islam. The Islamic calendar is shorter than the Christian one with only 354 days. The new year falls in the month of Muharram, the first month of the Islamic calendar. Now, there is a lot to say about the Muslim calendar, and as you might already guess, it's another story for another time, but they use a lunar calendar and celebrate New Year with the sighting of the new moon. In more recent times, most Muslim countries use astronomical calculations instead of the actual local sightings of the moon. And different countries use different calculations, resulting in a delay in celebrations between Muslim countries. Now, because there is a difference in number of days between the Gregorian calendar and the Muslim calendar, the Muslim New Year almost always falls in a different day in the Gregorian calendar. But usually the Muharram, or the New Year, falls somewhere between July 30th and August 27th. This period is very important, with people honoring their ancestors, a time of self-reflection and being grateful. People also visit their relatives and attend prayer sessions in mosques. The Muharram is more a period of mourning and reflection rather than celebration. Any kind of fights or wars are also forbidden during this month. Now, let us talk about Nowruz. I hope I'm pronouncing this right, but I'm pretty sure I'm not, so I apologize. But this is the Persian New Year. It falls around the 21st of March, but seeing how the Persians are using a lunar calendar again, the date is not quite exact when referenced to the Gregorian calendar. During New Year, people recite poetry, bonfires are lit and people leap over them in a ritual of purification. People sing and dance and come together as a community and spend time with family, celebrating and feasting and rejoicing. It is a moment when people signal the overcoming of darkness and sorrow. It is a moment of renewal and people look forward to the future, inviting it in. Now, let's move a little further to the east and talk about the Chinese. The Chinese New Year is celebrated for a month. I gotta be honest, I kinda like that idea. A month during which people prepare for the New Year, celebrate it, and then continue celebrating it for 15 more days. I really like that idea. The celebration falls between January 21st and the 20th of February, depending on the new moon. The Chinese use a lunisolar calendar, a combination between a lunar and a solar calendar. On the day of the New Year, fireworks and firecrackers are set off to ward off evil spirits. Families come together and sweets are prepared for guests and shared. These sweets are symbols of health, happiness, fortune, the usual, inviting a sweeter future in. The whole celebration ends with a lantern festival. This takes place on the 15th day of the first month of the lunisolar calendar, during the full moon. Depending on the day on which the New Year actually takes place, this event falls either at the end of February or the start of March. This festival also has a significant role to play in the honoring of one's ancestors. If you want to know more about honoring your ancestors, I have a video about ancestors and ghosts, so make sure you check that out. Another meaning behind the Lantern Festival is that people let go of their old selves and welcome new versions of themselves. This day became actually very important during the Han Dynasty. The Han Dynasty ruled over China between 206 BCE and 25 BCE, so this is a very old tradition. For the Chinese, the Lantern Festival is also a day of Uposatha, a day when the Buddhist principles are followed, a day when the defiled mind is cleansed, resulting in inner calm and joy. And I'm sorry for mispronouncing Uposatha. I'm sure I'm butchering the pronunciation, but I apologize. Going back to the fireworks and firecrackers, as you can see, it is a very old ritual meant to keep away evil spirits. But lately, or more recently, it was transformed in the centerpiece of New Year celebrations in most parts of the world. The show that enchants us all and signals the coming of the new year. It is quite interesting, in my opinion, to see how something profound and religious, even in nature, or spiritual nature, became a show that we all look forward to. It is quite interesting to me. Now, let us continue by talking about the Songkran. Again, I am so sorry for butchering these pronunciations. I am sure that most of you out there would like to visit Thailand at one point in your lives. It is a wonderful place and it has an amazing culture and history and food. But let's talk about their new year. They celebrate it in mid-April and it is called Songkran. Songkran. Sorry. This festivity is based on a lunar calendar and revolves around water. Water washes away everything, and in the Thai culture, water is used to wash away bad luck and sorrow and sins from the previous year. Tradition dictates that people visit their elder relatives and pour water over their hands and feet in a sign of respect. Well, of course, times change and people came up with a more fun way of involving water during the new year and washing away sins, sorrow, bad luck, all the bad stuff. They have massive water fights in the street using water guns. I mean, that sounds awesome, to be honest. This is an extra reason that makes me want to visit Thailand. With that, let us change continent once more. But before we do so, let us go to the miniature and I will talk about the difficulties I encountered. Because yes, I encountered difficulties. It is time to talk about mistakes and the difficulties I encountered, difficulties that I created for myself. Let me explain. Once all of the skin is painted, all of the highlights and shadows in place, it is time to bring everything together. In his video, Sam Lentz uses a wash he makes using water and sepia ink in which he adds a little of each color used. A little olive, a little blue, brown and the barbarian flesh. Well, I didn't have sepia ink, so I went with Seraphim Sepia from Citadel. It did not go as planned, and after applying the wash to the mini, I quickly washed it off. I did not trust the process. Perhaps I added too much blue, I don't know. Now that I'm watching the video again, I see that the wash was actually awesome, but alas, I did not trust the process. In a moment of defeat, I would say I started applying pure Seraphim Sepia all over the skin. This actually ruined a pretty decent paint job, and I didn't take into account that Seraphim Sepia is a glossy shade. I tried to salvage the mini, going in with a second attempt at a wash, with a little green and a little blue in it, but it was too late. The only thing that I can think of is applying an ultra matte varnish to try and tone down the glossiness of the skin. I also covered the highlights on Vorborigmus's face, which I had to reapply over the wash, and the results are not great. Lesson learned, curses used. Learn from my mistakes, trust the process. Welcome back. Let us continue our journey and start wrapping it up by talking about Africa and the Americas. Let us talk about Ethiopia. The Ethiopian New Year is called Enkutatash. I'm sorry if I'm butchering the name. What's interesting about Ethiopia is that they have a very strange and interesting calendar. It is a combination between an Egyptian and the Julian calendar. They have 13 months in a year, 12 of them are 30 days long, with the 13th being 5 or 6 days long. The new year roughly falls on the 11th of September. This celebration is very old. It is believed to be around 3000 years old, and it is centered around a story about Queen Sheba returning to her people after a very long and perilous voyage. The celebration lasts for a week, and it involves visiting family and spending time with them, feasting and drinking. The celebration also marks the end of the rainy season in Ethiopia, when yellow daisies blanket the countryside like little suns. To be honest, the symbology is quite nice. Now let us move to the Americas and talk about the First Nations, or at least some of them. For the First Nations, the New Year falls for different tribes on different dates, but usually the New Year falls at the end of January, early February, depending on the phases of the moon. These dates and moon phases are in relation to the winter solstice. The Umatilla tribe in eastern Oregon celebrates New Year on December 20th. The celebration is called Kimti Inuit. I apologize for butchering all of these pronunciations. This celebration is linked to the return of the sacred foods for this particular tribe, the return of the salmon and the deer. During the new year, the tribe celebrates with a community feast, songs, dances, drums, and prayers. The Hopi and the Zuni celebrate New Year on December 22nd, and the name of the festivity is Soyaluna, a time of purification, of renewal. The people wish each other prosperity and health, and after this celebration, throughout January, the Hopi people perform the buffalo dances for the Hopi holy cycle. The belief is that during the summer solstice, the sun god is closest to the earth, and during the winter solstice, he is furthest. The Hopi warriors feast so that they bring their sun god back during the Soyaluna. The Iroquois or the Iroquois celebrate New Year with the appearance of the new moon after the winter solstice in January or February. 5 days after the new moon, a 9-day celebration begins. This celebration includes dances, feasts, rituals, but it also includes an very interesting and important celebration, at least in my opinion. It is a naming ceremony in which the children born that year are given their Indian names. The members of the tribe are also released from their dreams, and a new year begins. And with that, I think I'm done. As you can see, there is a lot of inspiration you can derive by studying how cultures around the world and across time celebrate or celebrated the new year. Even the fireworks show that we enjoy have their origins in warding off evil spirits. Now, in your own creation, in your fantasy world, how, when, and what do people celebrate when it comes to the new year? I'm very curious. For example, in my world, I came up with a celebration, the Festival of Renewal, when people come together to drink, sing, dance, but most importantly, make clay pots with the faces of evil gods and representations of bad luck, illness, sorrow, and everything they want to ward off. They hang these pots from trees and place a coin or a small trinket, a toy, something that would bring good luck and joy inside of the pots. Then the community takes turns trying to break these pots by throwing rocks at them and keeping the trinket inside. The children go first, and once all of the pots are broken, the children are sent to bed. Then the pots are replaced with more lewd versions for the adults, and different trinkets, not safe for work versions, usually are placed inside, and the process is repeated. Every time a person misses a pot, they are to drink but water at first, so they are encouraged not to miss. Once they break a pot or two, they are allowed to drink alcohol. Of course, the more alcohol is ingested, the distance from the pot is reduced, and the more comical it becomes. This is just one celebration in one particular part of my world. I'm really curious about the celebrations that you came up with for your worlds. Or you could help me enhance my world by leaving comments with ideas that you have in regards to a New Year celebration. Come up with something. Who knows? I might get inspired and include your idea in my world. Of course, credits will be given. Before you go, make sure you hit that like button, as it tells me you found some value in this video. Make sure you subscribe so you are always up to date with my videos, and hit that bell notification so that you don't miss my next videos. Thanks. And with that, I want to thank you for the privilege of your time, and I hope you found some inspiration and learned something new today. I can't wait to see you all here next time on Funky Monkey MP, the place where you get your dose of miniature painting, history, world building and trivia. Remember, be curious, learn from the past, look towards the future, but live in the now and keep world building and creating. Have yourselves a wonderful, wonderful day. Cheers and Happy New Year!